That's amazing. And yeah, trips and travel, part of being a Peace Corps volunteer obviously is getting to the country that you're going to serve in, but then getting around in that country is a whole nother adventure in and of itself in many ways. And to tell the next story, we have Richard Smith, who was a volunteer in India from 65 to 67. And Richard's going to tell a story about train travel in that country.
Script. Welcome to India. I became a Peace Corps volunteer in November of 1965. I grew up in New York City on the east side of Manhattan. I started riding the subways on my own at the age of 10. All of my friends did the same. We rode to distant places such as Pelham Bay Park and Rockaway Beach. That was high adventure. We loved adventure. Those were the only trains I had ridden until I joined the Peace Corps and arrived in India as a member of India 20A, a group trained in rural public health and scheduled to be attached to a rural public health center in the state of Kerala, located in the southernmost part of India. During our 12 weeks of training at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, we took 800 hours of cultural and technical studies. After 300 hours of language study, we became conversational in Malayalam, the language of the people of the state of Kerala. After 250 hours of study devoted to rural public health and nutrition, our assignment, we became knowledgeable about the causes, dangers, and most importantly, prevention of a variety of diseases ranging from amoebic dysentery to tuberculosis, to hookworm, to malaria, to filariasis, and so on. We were taught to boil drinking water, beware of sliced raw vegetables, salads, milk, mosquitoes, and to always wear shoes or run the risk of acquiring hookworm. We started with 64 trainees. We departed for India with 38 of us remaining. The others were deselected, a polite euphemism for being kicked out. In fact, by the end of all this training, we were like the special forces of peace. We had been turned into highly skilled rural public health experts. We were to be the emissaries of the American people to the people of India with the goal of improving the health care of the citizens of the state of Kerala. Thus we arrived in India. We spent several days of orientation at the Maiden's Hotel in New Delhi, a leftover from the British Raj, where we ate from plates with knives and forks instead of our fingers, and with bearers at our service for every meal. Then we climbed onto the southbound train for our first-class reserved ride to Kerala. It was a train pulled by a steam engine, much as you might see in a cowboy movie made in the 1930s. We entered our compartments with our baggage and settled in. That evening, we had our first true Indian meal brought to us on metal trays covered with wax paper. The four of us assigned to the same compartment looked at the food. 3 of us hesitated and picked at the food, but not me. I figured this was the start of my 2-year cultural immersion adventure in India, and I would be one with the people of the subcontinent. I scarfed that food down, every bit that was on the tray, even the hot, spicy mango and lemon pickles, all the rice, everything. About 3 a.m. the next morning, it occurred to me that I probably was going to die on that train. Most of you likely have had a case of diarrhea. It is a common enough occurrence in international travel, even in Europe. Combine that with severe and constant vomiting, and you have a unique experience. Now add to that a fever of about 102 degrees, and things get very interesting. Next, imagine that the nighttime temperature is about 90 to 95 degrees in your train compartment, and you have those 3 symptoms. Of course, the train is moving, shaking, bouncing, and headed in the wrong direction, south, away from the hospitals of New Delhi. In addition, Indian trains at that time had toilets that contained squat latrines. Those squat latrines emptied directly onto the train track bed as the train traveled on. At least it gave me something to look at. I imagine you were getting the overall picture. The only good thing about that train ride was that my girlfriend at the time, Marilyn, was a trained nurse. I had, of course, not yet met my wife. At least Marilyn knew how to read the thermometer that the Peace Corps had thoughtfully placed in our medical kits, along with a hypodermic needle, the antibiotic terramycin, a bottle of paregoric, which in reality is camphorated tincture of opium, and some bandages. I think she also may have held my hand and administered last rites for me, as she was a good Catholic girl. To this day, I remember the train pulling into the Bhopal station late at night and the conductor calling out, "Bhopal, Bhopal, Bhopal." I could hear vendors hawking tea and coffee that was sold in little clay cups. Copy, 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 chai, 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 chai. But at the time, it didn't register with me as to what those words meant. It was just so much mystic background noise pushing into my overheated brain. My fellow volunteers looked at me with concern each time I staggered to the train's toilet. Marilyn stayed by my side as much as possible, I remember that. She was later to marry a volunteer from the German equivalent of the Peace Corps, a nice enough fellow, but that is a different story. When we arrived at the Madras station where we were ready to transfer to a train headed for Kerala, we had a 6-hour layover. Marilyn managed to contact the local United States consulate and obtain the name of a doctor approved to treat Americans. Upon arrival at the doctor's office, I was poked and felt and listened to. His diagnosis was gastroenteritis. However, I now think it was really bacillary dysentery. The symptoms are similar, as I later discovered. At any rate, at the time, I remember, perhaps I would live. Just wait it out. A day or so later, we reached our destination, Trivandrum, the capital of Kerala. I was weak but feeling much better. I had survived the journey. I could walk without wobbling too much. I no longer had to live in the toilet. Marilyn was much encouraged by my newfound strength. We got off the train. I had learned my lesson. I would now be careful about what I ate and drank. Maybe I should have heeded all that Peace Corps public health instruction in the first place. The local regional Peace Corps staff was present to greet us as we arrived in Trivandrum. They had a room reserved at the train station, I think, or perhaps we were brought to a restaurant. In any event, dinner was served. Banana leaves were placed in front of us and piled high with rice and curry. Pitchers of water accompanied the banana leaves and the food. I looked at those items. I saw the Peace Corps staff eat the food and drink the water. I thought about my experience of the last 3.5 days. I was hungry from not eating. I was dehydrated from not replacing fluids lost to diarrhea and vomiting. I was weak from the overall experience. However, I had learned the hard way to be careful. I decided to use my head. I would be cautious. I asked Tom Joyce, the experienced Peace Corps Southern Regional Director, if the water was safe to drink and if the food was safe to eat. Tom said, sure, the water in Trivandrum is very safe and the food was all cooked. I thought about it. I was hungry. Therefore, I decided Tom was right. I started gulping down the water and eating the food off those banana leaves. Looking back, I can see that probably was a stupid move on my part. However, I did not get sick again that day. It turned out the water was actually good in Trivandrum and the food had been very well cooked. After a few days of orientation in Trivandrum, I exchanged my socks and sneakers, remember hookworm, for a pair of Indian open sandals. Before departing for our duty sites, I was once again eating most everything placed in front of me. The sun was shining as it does most of the year in Kerala, and I suspected I would survive my 2 years in India. After all, the people were friendly, the water was drinkable, and the food was good. And that, my friends, was my welcome to India.